under a free system, no one could acquire a monopoly on anything. If you look at economics and economic history, you will discover that all monopolies have been established with government help, with the help of franchises, subsidies, or any kind of government privileges. In free competition, no one could corner the market on a needed product.
Let's say there is a deposit.
History will support me.
There is a deposit of uranium in Nevada. It's the only one in the United States, and it's our only access to that. And for self-defense, we need this. Whereas, let's say, in the Soviet Union, the state is able to command that. And a kind of a strange man of strange beliefs got hold of this uranium and said, I will not sell this uranium to my government. He should not be able to be forced by the government, according to your philosophy, to sell that uranium.
But you realize that you are setting up an impossible fantasy. That is, if you're talking of any natural resource that is vitally needed, it could not become vitally needed if it were that scarce. Not scarce to the point where one man could control all of it. So long as, I'm using your example, if a natural resource exists in more than one place in the world, no one man is going to control it.
All right, let's...
Very interesting from Ayn Rand. And that's one of the things
scary.
Well, the thing is, welcome everybody to the Front Line with Joe and Joe. We got a great show for you. We got a lot to cover and not a lot of time to do it, but we got a lot of clips for you. We're going to be talking about Danielle Smith. We're going to be talking about, why is Trump to blame? Polyev, who, again, I'm not the biggest fan of, but not for nothing. He's like, well, why are we blaming Donald Trump for our recession? Democrats don't know what to do. What's this guy's name? Plattner, this guy up in Maine?
I thought his name was Eichmann.
Yeah. His name was Hess.
Exactly.
But the Democrats just, Joe, we're going to talk about it. We have to take a lesson from Democrats. They don't give an F. They don't. It's a shame, but Republicans should be like, I don't care. I don't care. You guys don't care. You guys got the swastika on his friggin' arm. They don't care. He's going to vote the right way. We're going to go to that. James Carville's off the deep end. The guy's a lunatic. I never thought he was.
Oh, dude.
He's completely off the deep end. We cannot trust the Republicans. We're going to be talking about that. Paul Krugman's talking about purging America. Paul Krugman, a Jew, is talking about purging America. I thought that we're not supposed to do those things, Mr. Krugman.
Never again, Joe.
What?
Never again.
Never again. Except when it comes to those assholes who voted for Donald Trump.
Dude, it's unbelievable.
No, it really, really is unbelievable how they're allowing the leftists. So this has been a constant theme now for weeks. The left is out front and in your face about really at some point wanting to get very, very violent. Paul Krugman's calling for that because denazification not involved in putting a lot of people in prison, Joe. Denazification. That involved taking over all the institutions of government, all the cultural institutions by law through the power of the government. That's what denazification was at the end of World War II. So what he's saying is if you dare vote for anybody other than the Republican we approve of, I don't know, John Thune, Mike Johnson, right? Those are, or even, guess what? The most hated guy in the world 20 years ago was George W. Bush. They love him now. Okay. Oh. It really, I never like to use the word frightening, Joe, because to me, that's like what the left does. Oh, it's so frightening. It's Donald Trump is so, but when they're saying they want to imprison people, when Hassan Piker says it's A-OK for Luigi Mangione to kill the gentleman from United Healthcare, to shoot him in the head, first degree murder, deliberately took a man's life. Okay. When they're saying it, what are we possibly doing as, let's say, the right in America that we're allowing this to happen? Sorry, Joe, I am not a free speech absolutist. You do not have the right to say you could shoot a United Healthcare CEO or any other CEO.
No, you got to get arrested. You
got to get arrested. The Supreme Court made it clear you cannot incite violence. Hassan Piker, Paul Krugman,
they're inciting. The right kind of violence, Joe. That is the right kind of violence. They have no problem with that.
No, that's right. Because it's a violence they agree with,
100%.
just like
it's absolutely true.
Yeah, no, it's just like I've said a million times in my life. I understand what happened to the Jews was horrible. Okay, the Holocaust is a horrible historical event. It happened. It's horrible. But the same people who call that horrible, when you say, yeah, but Stalin killed 20 million, there's no comparison. You're right. There is no comparison. Stalin killed 3 times more of his own people.
Mao killed more than that.
Mao killed more than that. So what do you mean there's no comparison? Genocide is genocide, no matter how you slice it. And that's one of the things that's going on right now in the world vis-a-vis Israel.
Never again, Joe.
Never again. Except when it's when it's women and children in Gaza. Then it's okay. Or Paul Krugman saying, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, how dare you vote for Donald Trump? Let's go to Canada, and we're going to get into it all. Rapid fire today at the front line with Joe and Joe. Thanks for joining us. Here's Polyev. Okay, remember, Joe, just blame Donald Trump. When in doubt, no matter what part of the world you're in, just blame Donald Trump.
It seems like Canadians are laying the blame for their economic troubles with Mr. Trump, but you don't agree with that.
Well, maybe you are. Maybe you are protecting Mr. Carney from his economic record, but here's the reality. Mr. Trump's policies are affecting all G7 countries, and none of them are in recession. Mexico shares a border with the United States. Mexico is not in recession. Only Canada, under Mark Carney's liberal policies, is in a recession. France is not in a recession. UK is not in a recession. Germany's not in a recession. Italy's not in a recession. Japan's not in a recession. Only Canada among G7 countries is in a recession. And only Canada among North American countries is in a recession. So it seems that the other countries, despite Mr. Trump's unfair tariffs, have been able to craft policies to avoid recession. It's only
Yeah, but Mark Carney's not interested in avoiding recession. Mark Carney's there as a tool of the oligarchs to subjugate Canada. He's not interested in economic growth for the Canadian people. We know he doesn't give a damn about the Canadian people. That's why there's a groundswell of support for Alberta independence. We're going to talk about Danielle Smith in a minute, how she's shamefully backtracking. Joe, I'll throw it over to you. Poilievre's exactly right. All countries will pivot based on the policies of trade policies of other countries.
Well, a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
I mean, that was a great interview. Polyev shut her down, and you could see it by the look on her face. My only correction to that is Canada is no longer in the G7. After the years of Trudeau, and now we're talking 10 years of Trudeau-Carney, they are no longer a G7 nation, and you can blame the leadership of Canada for that. But let's talk about Trump. It was a winning strategy for Carney to galvanize the country around Trump hatred. That's how he won. So he's going to play that card again, and it looks like it's successful. What is the reason why Canada, after those 10 years of Trudeau, 10 plus years, Trudeau-Carney, why they're in the state that they're in, and they're not a G7 nation anymore? Because they have embraced globalism. Donald Trump embraces national sovereignty. It's two conflicting views, worldviews. And Carney, if you ask me, and it was a foolish move economically to do so, went to war with the United States of America. Now, I'm not trying to wave the American flag here, but what I am saying is, from a Canadian perspective, that is foolish. So Canada should blame their regime, the Trudeau-Carney regime, who embraces globalism, which is anti-people, which is anti-middle class, and they have proven to be in Europe and now in Canada, and the facts speak for themselves. I heard a statistic: the average Canadian, the economic state of the average Canadian is equivalent to someone who lives in Alabama. Alabama is one of the poorest states in the United States of America. So it is a worldview. And of course, the tariffs have affected Canada. But to Poilievre's point, Mexico, which is a much poorer nation than Canada, is not in a recession. But you have Mark Carney, who is the kingpin of globalization. He is an architect of globalization, and he is all about an ideology. He's not about the people. Blame yourselves. You voted for him.
Well, listen, Joe, listen, when governments come out with new regulations or new restrictions on business, okay, through the force of law, all right, that's what government does. They have to set the guardrails. I think the left goes way overboard, but leaving that aside, you can't have an economic system without rules and regulations, without laws. But what do businesses do in light of new regulation or new laws? They pivot, they adjust, they make the necessary changes, and then they get back to making money. That's what businesses do. Okay, it's just common sense. You're going to deal with the reality. Let's say higher labor costs. Okay, that could happen. It happens in many states when they jack up the minimum wage. A lot of companies, they regroup. They say, okay, what are we going to do about it? They go in the back room and they figure out a way how they're going to make sure that they can make their money while at the same time complying with the law. The new sheriff in town is Donald Trump and has been for a while, and his tariffs have applied worldwide. Why has Carney not been able to pivot and do something about it like a business would? Joe, we're always told he's a businessman, right? Isn't he a banker? Wasn't he in one of the European central banks?
Correct.
He's supposed to be a smart guy. What does he do? He blames Trump. Well, it's Trump. Trump's causing our recession. Polyev just laid it out. Germany's not in recession. Italy and all these other countries. And to your point, Canada fell out of the G7 a long time before Donald Trump's tariffs.
That's a fact. But
That
you know
is a
something,
fact.
he is a smart guy because he's pushing an ideology and it's working. It's just anti-people. It's anti the Canadian people. In his mind, he is successful. He wants Canada to join the EU. I've even heard that out of the
So
Carney
Alberta
regime.
can't get statehood. They can't be independent. But then Canada could join the EU. Like, I don't understand.
Speaking of that, the next clip, I think, breaks that down very well because there's a press clip of Danielle Smith getting basically pushed a little bit, and she pushes back with some interesting statistics that recall the time when Scotland tried to basically split from the UK. Basically, if Scotland at the time, if they did that, they would have been a third world nation. That's why they didn't do it. And Danielle Smith lays out some facts. It's interesting, and I think people will find it to be so.
I'll play it. We'll talk about it.
Good afternoon, Premier. Of course, this is going to be off topic. As a politician, you know that every campaign has a set of promises that they make to the people whose vote they want. And in this case, and this is a follow-up to a previous questioner, the independent side has offered all kinds of promises, and I just wanted your thoughts on those. You've talked about it a little bit already, but just your further reflections. You know, the economy's going to boom in a Republic of Alberta. There's going to be probably little or even no income tax in the Republic of Alberta. You'll be able to keep your Canadian passport. It'll be easier to get projects built, projects that have to go through Canada from the Republic of Alberta. The cost will vastly outweigh the benefits, and this will just become really a bonanza of money flowing into Alberta once they have the Republic of Alberta and not be part of Canada. I mean, how do you respond to that? Just in a bread and butter money way, because they're selling it as a great financial deal for Albertans.
Well, in my earlier answer, I think I came up with almost $400 billion worth of transitional costs that we'd have to assume, in addition to somewhere between 25 to $50 billion worth of annual costs. So I think people just need to look at the facts and see whether or not what is being proposed is realistic. I can tell you from what I saw with the UK and 10 years on, how the government is now trying to get into some kind of customs union. It didn't actually work out the way they anticipated. All of our trade agreements would have to be renegotiated. That includes CUSMA, it includes the comprehensive European agreement, it includes the TPP and every other trade agreement that has been negotiated. You don't get grandfathered in on those, and so that'll have a disruption in the economy. Presumably, we'd have tariffs on all of our goods that are being traded immediately. And the other thing that I think surprised UK residents is now they had to use the long line when they went to various European countries because they didn't get to the short line because they had to travel under a different passport. I think the folks who own homes in Spain were astonished that they had to sell them. So these are the kind of things that I think we have to be realistic about, and we have some indication based on the UK's 10-year experience that it certainly didn't pan out the way they expected, certainly did disrupt the trade with their allies, because if you reject your allies, then they reject you. And so I think that we have to be very realistic about what it is that we'd be looking at for dollars and cents. That's why I have said that I support Remain. I hope others do too. We want to be very realistic about what kind of costs and inconveniences people would have in their life if they decided to vote otherwise. And if you want to send a message, as I hear so many do, then vote to give us the authority to change our immigration system, to tackle issues around the Senate and appointing judges and getting the federal government out of our provincial jurisdiction. That's the way you send a message. So that's going to be the deciding factor, I think, on October the 19th. And we'll have more to say about it when we do the full review. As you could tell from the laundry list of things that I went through, it can't just be done overnight. We have to take some time with it. We want it out in time for people to have enough time to digest it before the vote. But
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, it's interesting. Someone on the chat just said freedom is costly, and it is. It's not as easy as people think. I personally think it's worth it. This is me. Look what India went through when they split from the United Kingdom. They're still going through it. Poverty. Gandhi preferred it. I'd rather be poor than be a slave. That was what India did. And they went through, decades upon decades. To some degree, they're still going through it. They're still climbing, India. And if you ask me, I think one day they'll be a world power because of the natural resource, intellectual capital that comes out of India. That's my opinion. But Daniel Smith does bring a point there. It's not as easy as you think. I've even heard people who are very serious about the South, the United States of America, southern states breaking from the rest of America. They don't produce anything. States like Arkansas, Alabama, no offense. I'm not trying to throw stones. They don't produce anything. So, what's your economy going to be? Are you going to sell wood chips? Let's be honest. So it's not so easy. But is it worth it? If I'm Alberta, I personally do believe it is. Because it's also a cultural divide when it comes to Alberta and Ontario and particularly Quebec. They have nothing in common culturally. And it seems now that the worldview is a greater divide than the cultural divide. You have a country, or you have a regime, we won't even call it a country, that is embraced globalism, and Ontario wants national sovereignty. Seems to me like it would be worth it. The costs would be worth it. But there are costs.
There are costs, but remember something. In any negotiation, you have to identify what your leverage is. And the leverage Alberta has is oil. And everybody needs oil. That's their leverage. When she talks about the cost, you're talking about trillions of dollars in oil production that could absorb those costs that she's talking about. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a disruption, but what does Scotland have? Leeks? They grow
haggis.
leeks and haggis, okay? which leeks are real good, or even from an Italian. Leeks are really good. They're in the onion family, okay? And haggis, I will never, ever, ever, never, ever eat, okay? I don't care. That's like if an Italian says, hey, would you ever eat soufrite? I won't describe for our audience what soufrite is. Think the Italian version of haggis. But having said all that, Danielle Smith, I know she knows this. The leverage chip that she has is the oil under their feet. That's the chip. And the other part about it is when you think through this and you get smart people in the room, oil is the basis of your economy, but it's not the only thing you produce. It's everything that is produced around it. So Venezuela is rich in oil, but Venezuela was a very wealthy country because once you know that that's your main export, okay, then there's a whole bunch of industries that build up around it. I told you the story of my great uncle, my grandfather's brother, who went from Italy to Caracas, okay? He got wealthy, not in the oil industry, in the textile industry. My point is that Danielle Smith has more leverage than she's letting on, That's my larger point. So would it be difficult? Yes. Would it require sacrifice? Yes. Is there going to be disruption? Yes. But let me correct me if I'm wrong. Does England produce oil? I know they have coal manufacturing, but does England produce oil? Scotland produces leeks. Ireland produces beer. Okay, I mean, in Scotch or whiskey. My point is that those things are all good and they can be a part of your economy. But she's got oil under her feet, and that's a very, very big chip to play. Because if you have that, you are one step ahead of countries that don't have oil right under their feet. Now, again, that's my 2 cents. I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
No, it's a valid point. All I'm saying is it's not as easy as it sounds. That's why I thought that was an interesting clip. I think, I think all of the facts are out there. I think there clearly is a divide on many different fronts. And frankly, the policies of Ottawa are destroying the people of Alberta, and they shouldn't stand for it. And I think it's worth it.
Let me ask you a question. Ultimately, that's going to be the problem. Is that take the American Revolution? Okay, the policies of the Crown, primarily taxes. Okay, the tax policy of the Crown are something that was oppressive to the United States, to the 13 colonies. And at one point, they decided to throw off that government. And they knew, Joe, that they were actually risking their lives. Most of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence were hunted down and killed. Okay? They knew they were signing their own death warrant. At some point, you have to say, well, do I keep getting kicked in the face by Mark Carney? Or are we going to have to really stand up and accept this sacrifice? Now, they're not going to go to war. They're not going to go to war. It's not going to be a bloody revolution, but it would be a revolution just with respect to the fact that it would be the Albertans, through their state government, through their provincial government, saying to Ottawa, we no longer recognize you as a legitimate authority over our region, over our province. We are now declaring our own independence. Now, it'd be really interesting, I hope it never came to it, where if the military, the Canadian military did have to get involved, okay, to stop that, I don't think they would be risking their lives. I think they would be risking disruption, short-term disruption, okay, because there would be a lot of money pouring into Alberta, probably from a lot of other countries, to increase their oil production, to bring a lot of people there, and I think they would be fine at the end of the day. So I don't think they would be risking their lives. I do think they would be risking their comfort for a while, and like you, I think it's worth it. Your final thought on that?
It's all about, if you ask me, civil disobedience. I think it's how bad you want it. It's how bad you want it, and if you could unify around the pain points. Because there is some pain. If people are willing to endure that pain, you unite around a common theme, which is freedom. I'm not interested in being a slave. I look to the future, and the future is bright because of our natural resources. Do we have to go through a period of transition? Of course, but it's worth it. And I'll tell you this, I never, ever, ever would go down the road, and I think a lot of it was rhetoric, and this is how Mark Carney won the premiership. Trump and the 51st state, that's not the way to go. I personally think Alberta should be a free and independent country. And I think if they pursued that, America would help them because they would be a great ally of America. And I think both countries, the Free Republic of Alberta and the United States of America, would thrive as a result of it.
The only problem with that, as far as America is concerned, you would need level-headed Democrats to be a part of that. And
well, they're globalists, and just like Carney.
Well, those who are level-headed have no voice whatsoever. The rest of them are completely effing insane. Put your seatbelt on here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I got 4 quick clips for you to play back-to-back. So let's pivot from Canada to the United States. A guy who's got a Nazi tattoo, okay, is running for the Senate in Maine. And let's listen to some of this stuff. Like I said, I hope you didn't just have your lunch, and if you did, just go get some brioche or something, and you'll be fine while you're watching these 4 clips, okay? So put on your seatbelt.
A lot about Democrats and how they've reacted so far to the latest scandal up in Maine with Graham Plattner, and how much of an example this is of the kind of lesson they've been trying to take from Donald Trump and the way he's operated for the last 10 years. Just look at how Democratic Senator Andy Kim reacted when I asked him about it. First, he said that it's up to the voters of Maine. And then he did something very telling. He focused on taking back control of the Senate.
What do you think?
Well, look, right now, for me, like, I have not met him. I've never talked to him yet. But what I do hear from people in New Jersey around the country is that they don't trust this U.S. Senate right now, led by the Republicans, as we are about to go back into session this coming week. And what they are pushing on is, $60 to $70 billion more for ICE, for CBP, for immigration. They want that stopped.
So do what it takes to elect Democrats, regardless of
from my
questions
standpoint,
like this?
I will work with whoever the people of Maine elect, but I hope that they elect somebody that is going to stand up to this president, work with me to be able to fight back against all these dangers.
Would this have been the way Democrats reacted 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Hard no. They would have been hand-wringing. They would have been publicly questioning whether or not this is really the guy who represents Democratic values. And now they're making a concerted, strategic, political effort to keep their eye on the ball and focus on what they need to do to win back the Senate. Regardless.
You have not said if you're still endorsing Graham Plattner. Are you still supporting Graham Plattner?
As I said, I endorsed Graham Plattner. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate.
Hey, my grandfather's whole family was murdered in the Sobibor concentration camp. Graham Plattner doesn't just have a Nazi tattoo. For 18 years, he had a tattoo of the concentration camp guards on his chest, and he knew what it was. He knew what it was. And to hear people compare that to anything else in the public sphere in America is insane, and it is insanely offensive. These people who are defending him called me and every other MAGA person a Nazi for 10 years because we voted for someone who we thought would improve the lives of working class Americans. And now they are lining up and defending a guy who had a Nazi tattoo, which he knew about, for 18 years. It is so insane to act like anything Donald Trump did was anywhere close to having a Totten cup on his chest for 18 years. This guy is a Nazi, and Democrats are lining up behind him because they think he can win.
Care if you committed a crime, didn't charge him, and then throw his ass in jail, but so forth. We have none of that. We got a fucked up guy who he could be 100 times more fucked up than he is. He'd never be as fucked up as what we got in Washington now anyway. And I just saw this tut and ooh, and hey, we got to do this and we got to be fair. James, if a Republican did what Graham Plattner did, you would be outraged. Yeah, I would. But what I'm more outraged about, and what I have to consider first, is this country is about to lose it. The whole goddamn thing. Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Why? Because he had to win a goddamn war. Okay, we got to win this. And if we got a person who's understandably got issues, yeah, good. And maybe people ought to see it. And maybe we ought to just be reminded of what these stupid wars have brought about and the consequence of said stupid wars. That stupid Susan Collins been for all of her political life. So I ask all of you to consider the candidacy of Graham Plattner. I ask all of you to understand his flaws and understand the peril.
Let me explain something to you, Joe Ressinello here at the front line with Joe and Joe. If Satan himself ran for Senate in Maine, the Democrats would excuse, they would say, well, he's going to vote the right way. And we know that they would embrace him because they are the party of evil. When it comes to not just things that we fight against as Catholics, like abortion, gay marriage, and the rest of it. In other words, this guy, she was right on CNN. You've been calling Trump a Nazi for the last friggin' 10, 12 years. This guy's actually got a tattoo. He's got the guards' names on his chest. And you got the balls to say that, well, that's nothing compared to Donald Trump. What did Trump ever do? In fact, you can make an argument that Trump has been overly friendly towards Israel. You can make that argument, okay? How many Jews vote Republican because of Donald Trump? Okay, where traditionally you think of Jews as Democrats. I mean, I don't understand how we're letting them get away. And by the way, Carville is just completely. He's lost his mind. He actually used to be. He's always been a loudmouth, the raging Cajun. I get it. I like loudmouth. You and me are kind of have big mouths. I love it. Okay, but he's insane. He's insane. I never compared Obama to Stalin. You know what I'm trying to say? I never compared Joe Biden to Mao. You can make some comparisons if you really want to, but I figure, okay, he's an American president. Let me just fight with him on these terms. They've never wanted to engage with Donald Trump, ever. He's had to employ the tactics that he has because they've made it clear they don't want to work with him. There was a couple of handful of Democrats that had the balls to stand up to their party. Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, when they wanted to get rid of filibuster, there's just been a couple. Fetterman turned out to be a bit of a pleasant surprise. I thought he was just a put-up job. He actually's got some stones. He actually, I think, his heart, I disagree with him on most things. I think his heart's in the right place. But Carville and the rest of them and Chuck Schumer, a Jew, is going to, Bernie Sanders, a Jew, is going to support
Dude,
a guy
it's
who's got a Nazi
unbelievable.
tattoo.
Joe, it's unbelievable.
This is the world we live in? Joe, help me, please. Joe, help me.
Well, all the people who bought in on the left to the virtue signaling, the pro-trans stuff, the pro-black stuff, the pro-gay stuff, should take note because they could care less. They care about one thing and one thing only, power. And if you are on their side to give it to you, they're with you. But if you're not, you're out. They will excuse anything for one thing, power. So throw out all the virtue signaling. Pay no attention to it because it's all bullcrap. When you have a Jewish senator from New York supporting a man who has a Nazi tattoo, how could you believe anything he says? How?
You can't.
Second point. This whole situation reminds me of when Biden was running and the Me Too movement was going on, and Tara Reid comes forward and says that Joe Biden aggressively assaulted me. And I remember Joe Pasillo and myself covered that story, and there was a piece in the New York Times that was run by a woman who said, Joe, and I'm sure you remember it too, I absolutely agree with what Tara Reid said. And that's her name. Am I correct? It's Tara Reid. Yep. Look it up for those who are listening to my voice. You could probably even find the article. And she says, and I believe her. I think she's telling the truth. I'm still voting for Joe Biden, and we're taking one for the team.
And you're an unprincipled scumbag then.
How could anyone take such a person seriously?
You can't. Because what you're saying is I'm a hypocrite and I'm only interested in my party having, as Joe Rossinello reminds us all the time, power. But I'm going to be a hypocrite. I don't care. Okay? If Joe Pasillo has a Nazi tattoo, throw him in jail. Effing execute him in the middle of Times Square. But if a would-be Democrat senator from Maine has a Nazi tattoo, going to have to vote for him.
And
Andy Kim said the same thing.
All week. I've been following this all week, dude. And I invite all people, because a lot of people probably don't even know that this is going on. Look up the stories, the interviews. These are like some of the common conversations that are going on X. Well, I know he's flawed. No. Having a Nazi prison tattoo on your chest is not flawed. That's disqualification.
That's right.
Flawed is you cheated on an exam in college. Flawed is, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like you lose your temper. You kind of speak out of turn every once in a while. That's flawed. However, a Nazi tattoo is not flawed. You are disqualified.
Right.
This under every situation.
Well, it's like we said before about free speech. I am not a free speech absolutist. If you have a hammer and sickle on your arm, if you have a swastika on your arm, you're disqualified from running for public office.
In this country, you should be. But here's the thing. This just is another example of how sick our country is. That you are going to take such a person seriously. In a healthy society, doesn't matter what state you're in, you're out. Just like in a healthy society, when Joe Biden on a CNN town hall is asked how many genders there are, and he says there's at least 3, you're out.
You're out.
In a healthy society, when you ask a Supreme Court justice nominee, what is a woman? And she says, I can't define that, you're out.
You're out.
Because that is a sick society. If you can't address basic things, and that's basic, guys. That is basic. And here's the sick part. There are people who are listening to this right now, and because I'm saying this, they're almost like they criticize me, either thinking that I'm somehow a simpleton and I don't get it, or I'm a barbarian. No, I'm neither. I'm a person, frankly, a practical person, as most Americans are. And most Americans would agree with what I just said. Even a lot of really smart ones would. So here's the thing. We are not a healthy society. These are absolute symptoms of a society that is in free fall.
That's right.
And I can't say it any other way.
Well, here's the thing, and we've covered it here before at the front line with Joe and Joe. When you have Mamdani talking about confiscating people's homes if they don't comply with the party in New York, when you have Hassan Piker saying Luigi Mangione was justified in shooting the United Healthcare CEO, when you have this going around in the ethos, Joe, what is it going to lead to? It's going to lead to violence. And why do people have to get it through their head? Donald Trump is not trying to inflict violence on the American people. They'll point to ICE, like Andy Kim points to ICE, and $70 billion for ICE, because we have immigration laws, Senator Kim. And those laws need to be enforced, and you need law enforcement officers to enforce them. And
well, let's stop right there. Why don't they want to enforce those laws? Everyone step back. Because they're their votes. That is why California, after day 5, still doesn't know who's going to run for mayor. It's still going on.
Right.
That is why they don't want to. It's not about anything other than that.
And here's another thing, and we're going to talk about feckless Republicans in about a minute. Where is the Department of Justice? They know there's shadiness going on. Don't tell me they have not gotten any referrals from people in California to say, there's something wrong here. We need you to step in.
Day 5. Vote drops are going on. Dude, India knows who is the president of India. In one day, there's 1 billion people. They make you dip your finger in ink. That's how primitive their voting system is to make sure that people don't cheat. And they know in one day. California, day 5, they still don't know. How is that accepted? How do we tolerate that? I don't know, Joe. I'll be honest with you. I'm like dumbfounded when I watch.
You talk about
all that one too.
You talk about Alberta. We mentioned it earlier here at the front line with Joe and Joe. You talk about, let's say, if the people of Alberta decided that they didn't want to be, they didn't want to be a part. They didn't want to be under Ottawa's boot on their face anymore. Okay, and their hardship that they would have to go through. But they would probably be willing to do it to break away from an oppressive regime. Okay, what is it that keeps people voting for John Thune? What is it that kept the people of Tennessee, who 70%, or Kentucky, excuse me, in Massey's district, who voted for him election in, election out? They voted for him 70%, and some money comes in, they tell some lies about him, and they throw him out. Knows what makes people do that. And what are you going to get in return? You're going to get a house full of Speaker Johnsons, and you're going to get a Senate full of John Thunes. That's what you're going to get, because none of Republican rank and file want to go through a little suffering either. But nothing's going to change. Here. I got 2 clips for you here at the front line with Joe and Joe about the so-called Republicans, really on the side of the people.
Man, all these Republicans voting to send more money to Ukraine. Unbelievable. all the Democrats, and from what I counted, 19 Republicans voted for that. Unreal. Keep you posted.
On this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 49. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn have not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to. The point of order is sustained and the amendment fails.
And
Let
when
me just
the
clarify
Democrats,
that real quick. That was for the Save America Act.
right?
They got 50 votes. They didn't get all the Republican votes. Tillis, Murkowski, and McConnell did not vote. Susan Collins did, and that's one of the reasons why they want to elect the guy with the Nazi tattoo to get her out. And then you have 5 days post-election that no one knows who's going to run for the mayor of LA. That's because you don't have the Save America Act. So Republicans could care less about the people. They're a part of the problem too. And then you have a guy who's basically telling us that 19 Republicans voted to send more money to the black hole, which is the Ukraine, which maybe about 1 million people are dead as a result of that wasted war. All our hard-working dollars thrown to one of the most corrupt countries in the world, resulting in 1 million people dead, all because NATO wanted to move its borders while America is upside down.
That's right. That's right. America is upside down. Republicans, listen, I never used to want to admit it, Joe. I'm not going to lie. I never wanted to admit we had a uniparty in this country. We have a uniparty. Okay. They pretend out for all the people out there like they're actually fighting for them. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for you. We know that as pro-life Americans, the Republicans have taken advantage of our vote on that issue for decades. Decades they've taken advantage of our vote because they come to us and they throw us some red meat or crumbs or whatever, however you want to say it. But they know at the end of the day, we know at the end of the day, that's all a show now. They all work together. John Thune will not nuke the filibuster, knowing the second the Democrats take the Senate, they are nuking the filibuster.
Of course. Let me just add this. They got 50 votes. If he nuked the filibuster, J.D. Vance's one vote as the president, the head of the Senate, as the VP, they would have passed the Save America Act. Right there. Everything that Mike Lee was saying is true. They had the votes if he nuked the filibuster, and John Thune refused to do it. He refused to do it.
Let me address Eric in the chat room. And by the way, we have a really good crowd going. Thank you all out there for helping us because we're growing, particularly on YouTube, and we thank you guys for it. Our producer's doing a great job trying to hit that algorithm. So Eric and Trevor and all the new people, and we don't care if you disagree with us. You don't have to agree with Joe and me. We love the fact that you're here watching the show, hopefully enjoying the conversation. Hit that like button. Help us hit that algorithm. Hit the share. Do it. Do whatever you have to do. But that's the thing. It's like they turn around. And something so obvious, as we said for the millionth time here at the front line with Joe and Joe, is that this is so overwhelmingly popular to have election integrity. Now, I brought up Eric in the chat room. Eric, respectful disagreement. A public trust, an election, I imagine also even on the state level, is still a public trust. There are still rules and regulations. And yes, the federal government has an interest, a national interest in making sure all elections are fair. The manner of elections are transparent. And that's not what happens. And this is my opinion, Eric. You might be right. Eric basically, for everybody out there, said, well, it's a state election. It's a local election. The federal government doesn't have any say. Eric, I'm going to try to research that. I do think there's an interest for the Department of Justice to step in there and say, there's a problem here. As Resinello said, 5 days in and you guys haven't counted your votes. Where's the votes coming in from? We want to see chain of custody. The FBI gets into local matters all the time. They step in all the time when it comes to, let's say, their crime-fighting activities. I'm sorry, Joe. The Attorney General can have the Department of Justice go and investigate anything they want on the state level if they believe a crime is being committed. And violation of election law is a crime. That's my point, Eric. Now, again, you might be right, but either way, there's ways around this. You know, the Democrats would find a way around it if they had an opportunity to do it. The Attorney General, what's his name, Blanche now, Joe?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure.
They're attacking him too.
To be honest, he's not that impressive. I got to be truthful with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you on that. We'll see what he does. But anyway, and thank you, CJ41. Wow, I really love listening to you guys. I really appreciate it. And like I said, we appreciate you guys being here. We're hitting that algorithm as hard as we can, particularly to grow on YouTube. And X and Facebook, but help us out in any way you can. But Joe, I do think the federal government has an interest in stepping in when there's something so blatantly obvious as what's going on. Let me give you the final thought on that.
Well, obviously, it's the largest state in America. And to be honest, any objective person that doesn't see what's going on in California to be a problem, frankly, you've just drank the Kool-Aid. There's no reason why an election should go on for 5 days after the fact. Whether it was an election for the crossing guard in your town.
No,
I mean, never mind one of the largest cities in America. I mean, clearly something is wrong. And 80% of America wants only citizens to vote and have voter ID. This is not a crazy idea. And here's another thing. There is no reason why we should have mail-in voting. None. Right. You can't make one decent argument for it. None. There is none. Well, there's not one. There is one. Because you could manipulate the vote through mail-in ballots.
Right.
And that's the only reason.
And they all do it. All right. I'm going to play a clip for you right now. If you don't think that they're all cut from the same cloth, all these guys. When I see Thune, I see Schumer. When I see Mike Johnson, I see Nancy Pelosi. I don't see any of it. You want to know why? The main thing I see that they have in common, Joe, is they don't give a shit about you, me, or any one of us. Watch this clip.
Bill Clinton go out of his way on the record, on camera, in a congressional deposition to make sure to tell the questioners, the Nancy Maces of the world, that as far as he knew, the president had no guilt or no association, referring to Donald J. Trump, with Jeffrey Epstein. And why, a week before that, did Donald Trump go out of his way in a stand-up impromptu interview with some fucking outlet to say, listen, I still like Bill Clinton. What?
What?
You called him a in front of the whole fucking world on international TV multiple times. You brought all the guys, accusers, onto a stage and said, listen, what I said on that Access Hollywood tape, that was pretty fucked up. But Bill Clinton, these ladies, you have the floor. You think these people are, you think you can come back from that? You think these people are friends? You think they got each other's six in life? No, they don't. So why did they have their six right there?
Yeah.
That is weird.
You think
Again, this is a unifying moment, people. It's everybody. It's Democrats, it's Republicans, it's full Elmo meme.
You don't think if someone defamed you and called you a that was a good friend, you'd be friends again?
No! We're done! We're done! Like, it's over! There's no returning from that. I think Hillary Clinton was even, like, complimenting Trump on some of the Iran stuff. What?! This is who invented Russiagate! Like he said she should be in prison! You know, like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm just, this is where I'm at. I'm exasperated. I think it's just, I mean, man, if you're.
Well, he's exasperated, and so are we here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, way in the breach. It goes to show you. Now, look, I am not even going to pretend to know why Donald Trump has gone down the road he has vis-a-vis the Epstein files. The only thing I can conclude is I don't think he did anything wrong himself with Epstein, because if he did, the Democrats would have it plastered all over the New York Times and everything else.
That's
couldn't
a fact.
find
That's
it.
a fact.
They couldn't find anything on him. So many people have come out and said, Donald Trump didn't do anything. In other words, and as far as palling around with the guy, okay, whatever. But if Donald Trump didn't commit any crimes, let's say, sexual crimes or against minors or any of that stuff, because if he did, they like I said,
well, let me weigh in, Joe, because I do have strong opinions on this. I agree with what you said, because if he did do something, that would have been up front and in center, because they would have crushed him with it. That's a fact. And he has been, like, they have gone through his world so many times, like, it can't even probably be counted. It's his donors. Right. That's why Barack Obama didn't go after the Epstein stuff. That's why Joe Biden didn't go after the Epstein stuff. And that's why Donald Trump isn't. And by the way, whoever the next president is, J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis, AOC, Harris, they won't either, because it's a pay-to-play system. And that is why, in that particular instance, that comedian was like laughing about it. They had their back because they know it's a pay-to-play system. Too many Americans don't get that. They actually think their vote is moving the dial. I'm telling you what your vote does. I'm going to tell you this right now in America. Your vote buys you about 150 executive orders day one when the president sits down in his chair. That is to throw his base some red meat, whether it's a leftist or someone on the right. They sign executive orders. They talk about it. Everything else is full steam ahead, no matter who the president is. The budget, the military-industrial complex, the pay-to-play nonsense with all the corporations, no matter who the president is. This has to stop. The only way it's going to stop, and Jimmy Dore, and if you ask me, this is a guy who supported Bernie Sanders. I don't stand with Jimmy Dore on a lot of stuff. I stand with him on this. Boycotts. He talked about the truckers boycott in Canada. He talked about the railroad. There was something under Biden where there was some type of railroad strike or something, and he squashed it. And Jimmy goes into that. Kudos to Jimmy Dore on that. That's how you beat them. We are not voting ourselves out of this because the system is not structured for us anymore. And if you think otherwise, you're not paying attention.
But here's one thing. Here's one thing that has to happen if regular people like us are coming together. All right, I'm not going to call you an idiot because you voted for Obama or Hillary or Biden. Don't call me a Nazi then because I voted for Trump. If all of our interests are being attacked, both you as a working man and me as a worker, I'm not talking you, Joe Resinello. I'm talking about other working people, blue-collar people, everyday people, working class, white-collar people, okay, or what's considered to be white-collar, then stop calling me names. I'm not judging you because you voted for Obama. I'm not judging you because you voted for Hillary. Stop judging me.
You know something? It's funny that you say that. I listened to a guy, and I invite people to listen to him. He was on Tucker this week. His name's Frank Wright. He's a guy out of the UK. He's also has some independent stuff going on as well. Pretty smart guy, if you ask me. He said, don't hate your neighbor. It's something that I have said because they're victims of propaganda. Many people just buy into the lies. To your point, Joe, like they buy into the nonsense. Like, oh, Joe Resinello, you're a Nazi because you voted for Donald Trump. No, I'm not. Just like that lady on CNN said, you're going to call me a Nazi because I sincerely thought that Donald Trump was going to help the working class and that's why I voted for him and I'm a Nazi? No, wrong. Wrong. They've just bought in to the propaganda. You have to look at the reality of what's going on. We've given you some really, if you ask me, important benchmarks that should open your eyes to what the reality is. That the system isn't working for you anymore. And here's the thing. I believe in the American system. What we're living through right now is not the American founding. It's not the idea of what the American founding is. This is absolutely a pay-to-play system. It's crony. This isn't even capitalism. It's crony capitalism.
It's more like corporatism. It's more like
there
fascism.
You go. It's not even capitalism. And here's another thing. Socialism is not the solution to it. We have to return to the founding. And here's another piece of reality. They're never going to let you do that through a vote. Never. Any person, they've tried to kill Donald Trump 4 times, and he hasn't even done everything he said he was going to do. And they still tried to kill him 4 times. Imagine if he did try to do everything he wanted to do. Imagine if he listened to Steve Bannon, who made him who he was. That's how he got into the White House. The first, it's funny. I've thought about this, Joe Pasillo. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. This should have been something. I missed this, and I should have caught it. Steve Bannon was the strategist for Donald Trump when he first won. Tap in to the disenfranchised American worker. That was the strategy, and it worked. The second he got in, Steve Bannon's like, okay, Don, now let's execute on that. And he was like, back up, Bannon. And he threw him out. That should have been a benchmark.
You know what that reminds me of? You know what that reminds me of is when in the opening scene of Lord of the Rings, where the focus is in the battle to get the ring and destroy it. That is why you're fighting. You want to get the ring and you want to destroy it. And the king, I forgot his name, he's brought there by the leader of the elves, right? He says, throw it in. Throw it in.
And he's like, no.
And he looks at it and he says, it's mine. That's what you just described is exactly what it reminds me of. That's why people get mad at me. People, Joe, I talk to about politics all the time. They're not Catholic, so they have no problem in saying things that completely offend me, like F the Pope, because to them, Donald Trump is their Pope, okay? But that's why, like, when I think about all these things and I'm critical of Donald Trump, it's for that reason. You have abandoned us on so many issues. And you've gone in for your donors and yes, the Israeli lobby.
Well, let me just say this in fairness, Joe. I don't mean to interject, because he's a practical man and he understands that if he wants to Steve Bannon isn't practical. Steve Bannon's a revolutionary. Donald Trump is not a revolutionary. He ran on a revolutionary platform, but he's a practical man, and he knows if he has to rule, he has to get in bed with these people. And that's not why I voted for him. And that's not why, and that's what he sold the American people. I'm a revolutionary. No, you're not, Donald Trump. You're not. Because he's a practical man, and he knows he has to sleep with certain unsavory people. Frankly, he's a fairly unsavory person, if you ask me, to make it happen. You see, I'm not interested in making it happen. I'm interested in turning the table upside down. I'll be full disclosure. That's why I voted for Donald Trump. I thought, and he's done some things, and I don't regret my vote for Donald Trump compared to who he was running against. I mean, let's be honest. But Donald Trump ran on the idea that he was a grenade. He's not a grenade. He's practical utilitarian leader. I'm not interested in that man.
Joe, remember back in the day when we got Well, remember back in the day when we used to get illegal fireworks, living in North Arlington or Newark, and you go out and you get M80s, all right?
Yeah, sure.
Trump's an M80. He's not a grenade.
I want a grenade. You see, this is what I'm saying. And that is the thing. He understands how it works. Sadly, a lot of the voters don't.
Well, Joe, listen, if he was a grenade, if he was an actual grenade, and I know he's got a lot on his plate, don't get me wrong, okay? But some of his people should be referring the Department of Justice and the Attorney General of the United States to forbid, okay, and to arrest people who incite violence. That's what he should do. Watch this clip.
Obviously, we need to defang Trump as much as possible and make sure that neither he nor anybody who follows in his footsteps has power after the next 2 elections. But beyond that, we really need to do a thorough purging of the United States. We need a demogification, and that is, I'm not going over the top by using a word that's very similar to the denazification that we pursued successfully after World War II in Germany.
Here's what bothers me.
Tell
and this
people
is
who that is. They probably
That
don't
is
know.
Paul Krugman. He wrote for the New York Times, supposedly the smartest guy in the room. He's always the smartest guy in the room. He'll be the first one to tell you that, okay? Paul Krugman has been a bomb thrower from day one. He is a hard leftist, is what he is. So here's my question, Mr. Krugman. I voted for Trump 3 times. I'd vote for him again. I'm going to vote for J.D. Vance or whoever the Republican nominee is because your party is effing insane. Do you want to throw me in jail?
Yes.
Do you want to?
Yes.
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 So then don't start. Then when you go on, when you listen to CNN and Scott Jennings and the rest of them need to get it through their head. Even though they do a very good job, people like Scott Jennings and others, okay, take off your gloves. Don't show any respect for those people who talk about democracy. Paul Krugman just told you in that clip, he is not interested in democracy. He's not. That's not what he doesn't care. If the election doesn't go his way, he wants to demagify you, denazify you. It's okay. Listen, he's got no problem throwing people in jail who didn't do a damn thing wrong on January 6th. He'd have no problem throwing Mark Houck in prison for defending his son in front of a rabid, violent, pro-abortion worker in front of Planned Parenthood. He was defending his kid, and the weight of the federal government came down on him. He'd have no problem with that. He also would have no problem with letting Luigi Mangione out of jail, would he, Joe? He would.
It's funny. Do you imagine if someone on the right made that statement, Joe Pasillo, like someone as quote unquote considered as serious as Paul Krugman, like on the right? Let your mind, wander. Pick a person, like an economist or say, an ex-politician made such a statement along the lines of, all of these leftists have to be, because this is what he's saying, have to be rounded up. That is what he's saying. And by the way, it gives me some chuckles. Here's a guy, he's probably fairly well-to-do, probably lives in Manhattan. He's in his country home. You notice like the background there. He's probably somewhere in like Massachusetts or Vermont in his second home, smoking his pipe and drinking some tea in a tranquil setting where most people don't have a second home in Vermont or in Massachusetts.
Or don't have a pipe.
Or even have a pipe. And he's basically making statements that are so anti-American that it goes over the top. By the way, that comment, dude, millions of views. That got millions and millions and millions of views. Where is the press denouncing Paul Krugman? How is he even employable after making such a horrendous comment like that, calling for people to be rounded up? A Jewish American calling for people to be rounded up because of the way they think or because of their politics.
Well, remember something, you mentioned it earlier, and let's be a little controversial here, and I've been saying this for a long time. Never again does not mean never again. Never again only means never again to the Jews. And that's a fact. That's a fact, okay? And I could back that up, and I won't get into it now because Paul Krugman is a Jew. But he's saying you could get rounded up and you could get thrown in prison. We're going to put you in a camp because we have to demagify the United States. What the F is Donald Trump doing that has any resemblance to Nazis? You know who has a stark resemblance to Nazis, Joe, and Nazi policies? The Democrat Party. If you look at their stance on environmentalism, on eugenics, on abortion, on all of it, okay? Big government, social services, all of that stuff. Joe, there's nothing really that distinguishes a Nazi from a Democrat, a modern Democrat. And here's another thing. There's nothing that distinguishes a Nazi from a modern Jewish Democrat because Paul Krugman is calling for the same thing.
He's Paul Krugman, and then we have 2 Jewish senators, Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer, who are supporting and gave full endorsements to a man who has a Nazi tattoo.
Yeah.
I mean,
so what world are we living in?
I don't know, Joe. And this is where people have to stop drinking the political Kool-Aid and start critically thinking and step back from the situation. This is craziness. It's craziness. And I'll
Some of
be
this,
honest with you, it's actually frightening.
well, it's frightening, but the thing is this. I don't know how to describe this, but there's a lot of people in America who see this, and quite frankly, they own guns. And the fact is that the CEO of United Healthcare had a gun. He might have shot Luigi Mangione. No, and defended himself.
But
I don't know.
is this a society that we want to live in? You see, this is what I'm saying. That these are again signs of a society that's in a free fall, where you're having shootouts on the street, when you're having people who are like have prolific platforms like Paul Krugman calling for people to be rounded up. These are not my words.
Right.
Where
he
you
says
have
he says to be purged. Can you think of a more Nazi word than purged? I can't.
Joe, that is so disturbing.
Right. But he can get now. Here's the problem. Paul Krugman is an a-hole, okay, and always has been. Let me be clear. But to your point, you made the point about Sanders and Chuck Schumer supporting the guy with the Nazi tattoo. Where's the press? Where's the press turning around and saying, because I'll be honest with you, I am a right-wing guy who says I do think that communism needs to be outlawed in America. I don't want to round people up, but communism as a part, the Communist Party needs to be rounded up. In other words, or it needs to be outlawed in America. I think they're an international criminal organization. That's all they are. That's all they ever have been. I've made this point at the front line with Joe and Joe a million times. For new people out there watching us, go and read a book. Came out about 30, 35 years ago called The Black Book of Communism. And you will see a scholarly work about their crimes that they've been committing going back to the October Revolution of 1917. It's over 1,000-page book. Okay. But if you really want to equip yourself, I think that the Communist Party should be banned as a terrorist organization. I do. I don't want to see people rounded up and thrown in prison. You want to throw out ideas out there? Fine.
But here's the deal. If you're going to make statements like that, violent statements like Hassan Piker, like Paul Krugman, you need to be arrested.
Yeah.
You need to be arrested.
Well, see, because that's
my point. You're calling
for
for violence. You need to be arrested. And that will stop it. Because then people will get the hint. I can't get away with that. I cannot make such a statement that's going to incite violence. That's going to, because frankly, Joe, a lot of people drink the Kool-Aid. They listen to people like that.
Well, listen, how many rank and file people have you ever met in your life? They have no problem with the CEO of the United Healthcare being shot.
We played a clip on that a couple weeks ago, and frankly, we haven't done this on this show, but I invite people to go do some homework on their own. Look at what just was going down in Newark, New Jersey, at an ICE detention center. It was horrible. Horrible. Right. By the way, we, as in the New Jersey state troopers, arrested around 60 plus people recently because they shut it down. Only 2 of them were from New Jersey. They were They were all busted. Dude, it was all a put-up job. That is an insurrection. They are terrorists. Right. 2 of them were from New Jersey. They were from New Mexico, Colorado, California. They went there, they're funded, and then they talk about January 6th. That got no press coverage, by the way. That went on for 2 weeks in New Jersey. Look it up on Delancey Street in Newark, New Jersey. It's there, no coverage. Bet you didn't know about it.
Right, they don't want to. The difference between people like us, and then we're going to play one more clip because we do want to get to one more clip about education real quick. The difference is that we understand that if we want to change things, you mentioned being a good American. Part of being a good American is that you understand the way you change things is through legislation. You get up, you vote, you inform yourself, you go and vote. You hopefully vote in somebody that's going to have your interests at heart. They're going to enact legislation that's going to be beneficial and basically give you. They can't give you everything because it is politics, but hopefully reflect your values and what it is that you want. That is respecting the Democrat process, the democratic process, excuse me. That's what it means to be an American, that you lose sometimes. Once in a while in an election, you lose and you have to reformulate your ideas. See, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. They say this guy, Trump, and all the Republicans, as Krugman just said, we need to demagify this country. And the way we're going to do that is through government coercion. We're going to throw you in jail if you don't take the right policy position. If you don't support Mamdani in New York, we're going to call you a hater. And we're going to have a law that says that what you're committing is hate speech. Joe, I don't know. You know, it's not pie in the sky to say that one of the things that's going to change this is our education system, because one of the things that caused this is our education system. Let's play a clip.
The spread and rise of American public schooling in the factory model was overwhelmingly about separating Catholic kids from their parents and their parish. Like, that's what it was for.
In 13 seconds, he just gave you one of the main problems with public education and why it was designed. You send your kids to Catholic school. Now, I don't send my son to a Catholic school, but I certainly don't send him to the cesspool of the public school. He's in a charter school that operates effectively like a Catholic school. I've said that before at the front line with Joe and Joe. Rigorous curriculum, formation, all the things that you would get in traditional Catholic education. Why does the left hate that? Because they want your kids. They want to tell you. Joe, they made movies. Worked. They made movies about it. And it's the rebel without a cause, James Dean. Don't you want to, if you were a teenager, Joe, in the 1950s, teenagers wanted to be like James Dean and Marlon Brando in The Young Lions. They're rebels, but who are they rebelling against? God, number one, and their parents, number two. And it was encouraged by Hollywood. And those who concocted this crazy, ineffective education system that we have right now, that, by the way, keep mostly minority kids in chains. Go look at Newark. Okay, we've gone through that a million times here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Why did they do that? Because they don't want Joe teaching his kids your values and sending them to a school that teaches them Catholic values and forming them properly. They want Luigi Mangioni's. Luigi Mangione represents chaos. You and your kids and me with my son, that represents order. Ben Sasse is absolutely right.
Let me just talk a little bit about that because people might dismiss him. I'm glad you mentioned his name. Ben Sasse, ex-senator from the state of Nebraska. He is not Catholic, by the way, interestingly enough, making that statement. And when he resigned from the Senate, he went on to become the president of the University of Florida. So he knows a little bit about education, and he's highly educated himself. And he's on his deathbed. Notice his face. He has what's it called? Stage 4 cancer. So he's been giving a number of interviews. They're very candid. And what he said is 100% accurate. So this is what I have to say about it. If he knows this, he's not even Catholic. What are we doing about it? Why do we allow our children to get sucked in to that swamp? Well, I know why, because not everyone has money, and it costs money to go to Catholic school, and we don't have the vocations like we did in the past, and people have to get paid. I get it. But what are we doing creatively to make this happen? Joe and I have had a number of people in our interview shows to talk about those solutions, because here's the deal. What Ben Sasse said has been effective. It has been effective. That's why you have the elite class that we have today. They steal your children away from you. And then if your kid is gifted and he goes to one of those schools like Brown or Cornell or Dartmouth or Penn or Harvard or Yale or Princeton, it gets even more exacerbated. They come home and you're like, who is this kid that I raised, that I sacrificed for, that I gave a good example to? Who is this kid? And when you have brains like that and radical ideas, which are being taught at those universities, it's like giving a handgun to a child that's loaded. And that is why America is the way it is today. The slow march through the institutions.
Well, it was slow. That's why I've said a million times at the front line with Joe and Joe, we have to have a swift ass kicking of them out of our institutions. We have the truth on our side. They have lies. That's why I've said before, Joe, and I know this to be true. Theirs had to be a slow march because they were proposing lies. So it was all subtle. It was on the edges. They did the same thing with the Catholic Church, and we're both Catholic, okay? They infiltrated the Catholic Church. Bella Dodd testified to that. She sent 1,100 communist operatives into Catholic seminaries in America. They did the same thing in the education system. We need to have a swift ass kicking. We don't need a long march through the institutions. By the way, just to show you how Hollywood is complicit in all this. What was one of the biggest shows of the 1980s? Family Ties, right? Family, remember that?
I remember that.
Right? Michael J. Fox plays Alex P. Keaton. All right. Mom and dad are a couple of liberals, entrenched liberals. All right. So are the other kids. They're being raised properly. And Alex has got a poster of Richard Nixon on his wall, right? But you see how they mock it? When it was James Dean and Marlon Brando and all the rebels of the 1950s rebelling against their stuffy parents, okay, that was okay. Go home. Tell your parents to go F themselves. Tell your parents that you don't believe in their God anymore. Tell your parents that they have no allegiance to you whatsoever, okay? And that was acceptable. But what did they do with Alex P. Keaton? They mocked him. So when the liberal parent sends their kid to school and the kid comes back conservative, oh, he's to be mocked, shunned, not even a part of the family. Once in a while, they have an episode where they say, Alex, we love you. They hate their kid. They hate their kid. They hate the fact that people think differently. But that's why they want to use, like Paul Krugman said, they want to use coercion, government power. Because they know that, Joe, communists have been doing this from the beginning. They know that the human spirit is something that they cannot defeat. So what do? They're going to prevent you from eating. They're going to prevent you from working. They're going to tear apart your family. They'll just outright kill you, as we've seen. That's been their main tactic for the last 100 years. They'll just put a bullet in your head. There comes a point where, and the Catholic Church used to do a lot better job of this, okay? And we hope that the USCCB gets their head out of their butt a little bit, okay, and understands the importance, as we had on, who was it? Bishop
Carl Clem. He's coming back, by the way.
Yeah, so Bishop Clem from
in Wichita, Kansas.
Wichita, Kansas. He's got the right model to make American Catholic education more affordable. You don't have to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to send your kids to a Catholic school. You shouldn't have to, okay? Because it's going to be, I will put it like this, because I know not everybody out there is Catholic. The Catholic model of education is what we need. And part of that model is forming the young person.
The whole person.
The whole
person, not just the mind. Like it's the body, it's the spirit, it's everything. The idea of service to your fellow man. That's what you get at a Catholic school. I went to public school and I went to Catholic school. It's not even comparable. No. It's not even comparable. Sorry, and I went to both. And this is the thing. They know this. If they know it, we should know it too. What is the church doing about it to making Catholic school affordable for all people? It shouldn't just be for rich people. It's not right, Joe Pasillo, or professional people. Every person should be able to get an education, a good, solid Christian education. We are a Christian nation, by the way. At least we're supposed to be one. We're not, but we're supposed to be one. So why do we allow them to do this? Here's a guy, he's not even Catholic, and he's calling it out. What are the bishops saying about it? Is this a priority? Because it should be.
It should be. No, their priority is bashing Donald Trump and his policy on immigration.
Sometimes he needs to be bashed, but and I have no problem with that. We have to insert ourselves in the public square as Catholics. We have to insert ourselves. Ben Sass isn't even Catholic, and he's inserting himself here for us. Why aren't we doing that?
Well, I'll tell you what, you and I are, and
have been.
And thanks to all the good people out there, we're growing. We really, really are asking you. We had a really good crowd today. We had a lot of comments today. Thank you all very much for interacting in the comment section. So we really appreciate that. You could really, really help us out. Guys, when I'm watching somebody I like, I hit the like button. It takes 3 seconds. I hit the share button, and I'll share it on X, or I'll share it here, or I'll share it there. If you're seeing us and you like us, subscribe to the channel, The Frontline with Joe and Joe. You see, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on X. It's always The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the share, and help us out. Because Joe and I know that our show, both this show and our regular show, are in the hands of God. We've said that from the beginning. We believe that we're doing something that we're called to do. And we're going to keep doing it until God says no. And so far, he's not said no. But we need your help. Help us along. Help us to get out to a wider audience. Because I'll say this, I'm not the bravest guy in the world, nor is Joe. But we are worried for the future of not only our nation, but of our families. Okay? What happens if my son follows in my footsteps to a certain degree and he's an outspoken big mouth like me? Joe, I'm not in jail yet, but what about if his generation goes to jail? All right. We know that that's what Paul Krugman was calling for, and we have to fight against it. So we want to thank you all out there for joining us in this fight. We go live every Sunday around this time. We have our interview shows that we post all over social media that we do on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network up in the Northeast in the New York metropolitan area. As I said, thank you once again. Help us out as much as you can. We're grateful for as much help as you've given us. And remember, until next week, that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation